Hello, everyone. Welcome to my first classic Doctor Who review, and today I will be starting with the first story, An Unearthly Child. Because Jodie Whittaker is leaving, we get the return of the man, the legend, and the king, Russell T Davies. And next year is Doctor Who's 60th anniversary. Let's start with the production history. In December of 1962, BBC Television's controller of program, Donald Baverstock, informed head of drama, Sidney Newman, of a gap in the schedule on Saturday evenings between the sports showcase, Grandstand, and the pop music program, Jukebox Jury. Baverstock figured that the program should appeal to three audiences: children who had previously been accustomed to viewing television during the time slot, the teenage audience of Jukebox Jury, and the adult sports fan audience of Grandstand. Newman decided that a science fiction program should fill the gap. Head of the script department, Donald Wilson, and writer C.E. Weber contributed heavily to the formatting of the program and co-wrote the program's first format document with Newman. The latter convinced the idea of a time machine larger on the inside than the outside, as well as the central character of the mysterious Doctor, and the name Doctor Who. Production was initiated several months later and handed to producer Verity Lambert, the BBC's first female producer, and story editor David Whittaker, to oversee after a brief period when the show had been hand-led by a caretaker producer, Rex Tucker. Know the whole production history and watched An Adventure in Space and Time, but don't worry, I will review An Adventure in Space and Time next year for the show's 60th anniversary. This story was supposed to premiere on November 22nd of 1963, but it was delayed because of the JFK assassination, and it was pushed to November 23rd. I watched some reviews of this story, and some people say the first episode is good, but it goes downhill when we get to episode 2. So, here is the question: is it a good story, or is it a classic? Well, let's find out in the review. I love the opening titles, and the visual effects by the BBC is amazing, and the theme by Ron Greiner and Dila Derbyshire is beautiful to hear. In episode 1, called An Unearthly Child, we see a policeman patrolling outside of I.M. Foreman Junkyard, and we see a police public call box, and we hear a humming noise. We are at Coe School, and we are introduced to Barbara Wright, played by Jacqueline Hale, and Ian Chesterton, played by William Russell, and they are talking about one of their students, Susan Foreman. We are introduced to Susan Foreman, played by Carol Ann Ford, and Ian and Barbara have a suspicion of Susan. We see Ian and Barbara follow Susan to the junkyard, and we see Ian and Barbara have flashbacks of Susan, and I thought that was good. We see Ian and Barbara enter the junkyard, and I will admit it is creepy to enter a junkyard at night. We see Ian and Barbara notices the police box, and they feel the vibrations of the box, and there is something more about the police box than meets the eye. We see Ian and Barbara notices an old man, and it's the first Doctor, played by William Hartnell. We see Ian and Barbara are spying, and they hear Susan's voice. We see the Doctor is trying to get Ian and Barbara to leave, and what do? They go inside of the police box, and the police box is a spaceship. The line I like from the Doctor when he says, "You say you can't fit an enormous building into one of your smaller sitting rooms? We find out the ship is called the TARDIS, and TARDIS stands for Time in Relative Dimension and Space. I do like the original TARDIS console room, and it's a great design. We see Susan tries to have the Doctor to have Ian and Barbara leave the TARDIS, but the Doctor refuses. We find out the Doctor and Susan are not humans, and a good line from Susan when she says, "I was born in another time, another world." We see the Doctor gives up, but tricks them, and we see the TARDIS takes off for the first time. And the scenes I do like is when we see London, and we zoom out, and we see the time vortex, and that is great effects back in the 60s. We see the TARDIS lands in the wilderness, and we see a caveman shadow over the TARDIS, and that is a good end to episode 1. In episode 2, called The Cave of Skulls, we see a caveman, and we see a tribe, and they are trying to make fire, and that is good children's education, am I right? We see Ian and Barbara regain their consciousness, and we also find out the TARDIS is also a time machine. A great scene is that when we see the Doctor opens the doors and Ian and Barbara are shocked to see what is outside. We find out from the Doctor that the TARDIS can change its shape, but it's still a police box. One of the funniest scenes I laughed at is when we see the Doctor smoking a pipe. And you can't smoke on American TV or British TV nowadays. We see the caveman kidnaps the Doctor because he smoked his pipe. We see the Doctor regains his consciousness, and we see the Doctor volunteers to make fire so he can get out of it. We see Ian, Barbara, and Susan rescue the Doctor, and it doesn't go well, and they are caught. And Ian is about to be killed, but the Doctor saves him, and he says, if he dies, there will be no fire. We see the Doctor, Susan, Ian, and Barbara are at the Cave of Skulls, and then that is the end of episode 2. In episode 3, called The Forest of Fear, we find out that the old woman took Zal's knife because Zal thinks she is planning to kill the Doctor, Susan, Ian, and Barbara, but sets them free as long as they don't make fire. We see the Doctor, Susan, Ian, and Barbara escape into the forest. We see the cave tribe are hunting the Doctor and his companions, and we see one of the cavemen gets attacked. At the end of episode 3, we see the Doctor and his companions see the TARDIS, and they are ambushed by the cave tribe. In episode 4, called The Fire Maker, the Doctor and his companions are caught by the cave tribe. We see the Doctor and his companions are back at the Cave of Skulls. We see Ian, Barbara, and Susan are going to make fire. And for the kids that are watching this, get some grass and wood and rub 2 sticks together and you get your fire. The scene I like is when we see the 2 cavemen are fighting and we see the fire in the background, and that is cool. We see Susan has a fire stick and puts a skull over it, and that is how they are going to escape. We see the cave tribe notices the skulls, and they think they are dead, and the Doctor and his companions run back to the TARDIS. We see one skull falls over, and the cave tribe goes after them. We see the Doctor and his companions are back at the TARDIS, and the TARDIS takes off. We find out the Doctor can't fly it properly, and we see the TARDIS lands in the jungle, and we see the radiation reader reads at danger, and that is the end of the story. For this review, I watched my DVD because it has the pilot episode, and I thought compare the pilot and episode 1 together, and the line I noticed from Susan in the pilot when she says he was born in the 49th century. And there's a lot of difference between the pilot and episode 1. When they were making this story, they had to pay £2,300 per episode, and that is $3,124.78 in the US. And that is cheap. And imagine if NBC, ABC, and CBS had to work on a budget like that. And if they had to work on a limited budget, I bet it would not look good. Because you had to hire the actors, the writer, the director, and the rest of the production staff. If you want to make a TV show for the BBC in Britain and wanted a big budget, good luck with that. I want to make a show for the BBC and I want a big budget. Okay, we will give you a limited budget of £2,300, but I want a big budget. Shut up! You get a limited budget. According to Adam Martin, the first story pulled in 5.9 million viewers, which is not a bad start for a show, but a good start to the show. But the next story will get very popular. Now, here is the question. Is it a good story, or is it a classic? And where do I stand on this? And I will say it is a classic. I will admit the story is good, the sets are very good, and it was shot in black and white, and you can have atmosphere. And this story had atmosphere and mystery. The cast is really good, and it would take them a while to get used to their characters. The script by Anthony Coburn is good, and the direction by Warris Hussein is good, and I will give this story a 10 out of 10. That is my review on An Unearthly Child. If there's a classic Doctor Who story you want me to review, leave it in the comments, and I will see you all next time.